To use PowerShell for Azure SQL Managed Identity, you need to understand the basics of Azure SQL and PowerShell. Azure SQL Managed Identity allows you to connect to Azure SQL database without needing to manage credentials. First, you need to install the Azure PowerShell module, which can be done by running the command install module name as. This module provides a set of commands for managing Azure resources, including Azure SQL database. Next, you need to connect to Azure using the Connect As Account command, which will prompt you to sign in to your Azure account. After signing in, you can use the Set As Context command to select the subscription you want to use. To enable managed identity for an Azure SQL server, you can use the Set Azure SQL Server command with the Assign Identity parameter set to System Assigned. This will enable the system assigned managed identity for the server. Once managed identity is enabled, you can use the Get Azure SQL Server command to retrieve the managed identity details, including the client ID and object ID. You can then use these details to grant access to the Azure SQL Server. To grant access to the Azure SQL Server, you can use the new As Role Assignment command to assign the necessary roles to the managed identity. For example, you can assign the SQL Server contributor role to the managed identity to grant access to the server. Finally, you can use the Invoke SQL CMD command to connect to the Azure SQL Server using the managed identity. This command allows you to execute SQL commands against the server without needing to provide credentials. Best practices for using PowerShell for Azure SQL Managed Identity include always using the latest version of the Azure PowerShell module and ensuring that you have the necessary permissions to manage Azure resources. Additionally, you should always use secure methods to store and manage credentials, such as using Azure Key Vault to store sensitive information. In summary, using PowerShell for Azure SQL Managed Identity provides a secure and efficient way to manage Azure SQL resources without needing to manage credentials. By following these steps and best practices, you can use PowerShell to enable managed identity for an Azure SQL server, grant access to the server, and connect to the server using the managed identity.